What's up guys, Enrique here, and today I want to talk to you about the differences between the Launchpad and the Launchpad Pro. Let's get into it. So I guess first let's figure out what the Launchpad actually is. What the Launchpad does is it's a MIDI controller, and what MIDI is the data between a device like this and your computer. So with MIDI information coming out of the USB, you can use this to control different programs on your computer. But where this is most beneficial is with the program Ableton. There are a few other DAWs or digital audio workstations that you can use this with. You can basically use this with anything. I've used this for projection mapping all the way down to, lighting apps and different things like that. At the end of the day, this MIDI data can be mapped and routed to different things within your computer if that program allows it to. But if you were to use this with Ableton, the included software that it comes with, all these buttons and screen printed things that are on the unit itself are already here and already pre-mapped for you. So you just plug it in and go. Both the Launchpad and the Launchpad Pro have 64 different pads right here on the face of them, not including these circular buttons on the top. What all these buttons do here, control Ableton or different apps that you're using. But what the pads do, the pads allow you to play notes. They allow you to do an array of things. You can play notes, you can play drum sounds, you can launch samples and play samples. But again, it's important to remember that all the sounds and loops and all these little samples and things that you're playing aren't actually stored in here or being played off of this. The Launchpad is controlling a piece of software that has all the information in there, and you're using this to launch those sounds. And another cool thing about using this with a program like Ableton is that these pads are all LEDs. You get full RGB LEDs, red, green, blue, which allow you to access 64,000 different colors. Even though a color might be red and then slightly more red, the flexibility that you have to be able to have this match everything that's on your computer is incredible. It's super awesome, super handy, and really easy to stay organized, especially when you have maybe your computer pushed off to the side and you can only see this. So switching it up from the Launchpad over to the Launchpad Pro, everything that I said that was originally included in the Launchpad is included in the Launchpad Pro, but in a little bit more of a finer detail. You get a few things like a couple standalone modes, which are really nice, scale mode, as well as a MIDI in and out. But I'll get into this in finer detail, so let's go over to the desk and check it out. Alright, so now that we're here on the desk, we can see the two Launchpads are on and going. They have the similar Vegas mode, which is basically like a sleep mode. They project these fireworks on the front of them. So again, another big main difference between these two are the inputs and the outputs on the back of both of these devices. So on the Launchpad, you just have a USB out. That's it. That's the only in and out port you have. Connect this to a laptop and it'll boot right up exactly as you see it here. And then once you open up a program, it'll lock into that program and be ready to go. On the Launchpad Pro, however, you have a wall power, a USB slot, and a MIDI input and a MIDI output over here. And what those can be used for are connecting to external synthesizers. It's a 5-pin MIDI, and again, what MIDI is just the information of note data or pressure sensitivity here being sent to another device, for example, a synthesizer. So it comes with these little converters here. It's a little TRS 1/8 inch, kind of looks like an auxiliary cable, to a 5-pin MIDI jack, and this will allow you to connect it to older synthesizers or even newer synthesizers in this day and age. With this, if I go ahead and plug it into the back, it's kind of like a little hack. You can kind of trick it into thinking it's connected to something, so now you can have access to the way it works. But with this unplugged, you can see the range of colors that you can get from both of these devices. That's because they both use the same RGB LED technology to reach those 64,000 colors that I mentioned earlier. But for now, let's leave this plugged in and let's get into the finer details of both of these. So what we're looking at right now on the Launchpad Pro is note mode. If I hold down setup, you can change from Ableton Live mode to note mode to drum mode. You even have like fader mode, which is cool. So depending on how hard I hit the pads, the slower that information will fade up through all the values. So this is a great example of MIDI. Say I have one of these set up to be a filter on a synthesizer. If I press this slowly, it'll slowly fill it up, or if I hit it hard, you'll see that it goes away really fast. You even have another mode like programmer mode, because the Launchpad Pro is hackable. There's an open firmware for it that you can kind of create your own things to do with this, but that is an entire different discussion, and that goes way over my head. This guy is not hackable, but this one is. If we go back to note mode, when in note mode, what we're looking at are different notes of a keyboard and different LEDs that when I press this it turns green and that one turns green too, just showing you that this is the same note as that. And the way the notes are displayed on the Launchpad Pro is that these pink notes are your octaves. They all start with C, but you can also change the root note using these. So now our root note is D. The way the notes are displayed is pink is the octave, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, and so on. And it just keeps going up. You can see when I reach this end that this one has now lit up, showing me that these two are the same. So if I wanted to continue going up in scale, I can just keep hitting these here and follow it along. But where this gets really cool is scale mode. So if I hold down shift, hit note, this is where I choose my scale. If I hit this green button here, it'll turn on scale mode. Select this. These are 32 different scales that you can choose from. And you can see that these blue lights are changing, right? So if I hit this one, this is a C minor. This one's a major. Blues, or they go on and on. I always forget which ones are which, but there's a great sheet on the Novation site that shows you all the scales. I usually leave it to C minor. And how I know that this is a C minor is that this is the keyboard. You can pretend that these are the white keys and these up here are the black keys. So if I wanted to make this a D minor, I can hit this note, and this is the D minor. And the ones that are dimmer than these are the notes that are not in that scale. So say I'm in a D minor and I hit note mode again. You can see that the layout has changed because it takes out all the notes that are not in that scale, allowing me to play only the notes that are in that scale. So I can make up chords and do a bunch of different things, and I mean, you can throw this thing at the wall and it will never fall out of key, which is great, especially for me because I have no idea how to play the keyboard. Another awesome thing about having all the wrong notes out is our octaves are now just on the left and the right. Where this is cool is if I go down an octave, I can easily hit 8 octaves with one hand. I mean, trying to do that on a normal keyboard would basically be impossible. I mean, I don't even know how many keys you would need for that. But to turn scale mode off, hold down shift, hit note, and then make sure that this green button is dim. With that dim, that shows you that note scale mode is now off. We hit note mode to go back, and we're back to our original. So another big difference between these two is that when it comes to controls for Ableton, this guy, you only have these 8 up here. Moving up and down in your session view, left and right. The session view itself, user mode 1, user mode 2, which you can use to play different devices. Like, say you have a bunch of samples loaded in Ableton, you can play them here, or a keyboard or something, you can play it here. Same with user 2. And then the mixer button. When you press the mixer button, these buttons along the side, which normally are to launch an entire row or scene of clips, now correspond to these fonts here on the side. For example, volume, pan, send A, send B, stop, mute, solo, record on, and so on. Where on the Launchpad Pro, you have 24 controls. You have the same 4 across the top, except now you have a dedicated note mode, a dedicated device mode, and a user mode. A single user mode as opposed to these 2. But don't let that fool you, because you have this shift button here that accesses a ton more controls, as well as a click for your metronome, an undo, or a shift redo, which is so awesome. That is one of my favorite features, even with the metronome as well. Being able to turn on and off a metronome without having to scroll around and mouse around a screen is incredible. You have the delete button to delete clips, quantize or turn on the recording quantize, duplicate clips, double your clip length, and then the overdub button, which is really fun. Say you play some notes in, you can hit the overdub button and then record more notes on top. So then all of these on the Launchpad that we had to hit mixer mode for are now dedicated buttons here on the Launchpad Pro across the bottom. So this makes navigation and using Ableton a lot quicker. Another big feature on the Launchpad Pro that is missing on the Launchpad, if we focus on the pads themselves, and I press these, they're a lot more pad-like, where these are a little bit more button feeling. I mean, don't get me wrong, they feel good, nice, squishy, comfortable, but they're more button-like, which means that they are not velocity sensitive and they do not have polyphonic aftertouch. The Launchpad Pro, however, does. These 64 pads that are used to play notes and launch things and so on and so forth are velocity sensitive and have polyphonic aftertouch, not just regular aftertouch, polyphonic, which is really cool. So if I plug this back in again, what this means is velocity is how hard I hit it. If I hit it soft or really hard, that's different, more information being sent to a device or a synthesizer or the computer itself. And the cool thing is, if you hold down the setup button, you can change its sensitivity of the velocity as well as the aftertouch. And that's really, really fun to use. So not only are you getting more dynamic range while playing, you're also giving it a more humanistic feel. And the other thing is the polyphonic aftertouch, which is my favorite feature. So what aftertouch means is when you press a note and you press it a little harder after the fact that you've pressed it, that's information being sent into the computer or the synthesizer. So polyphonic aftertouch is saying, I can be pressing, say, this chord like this, right? If I press this top note even harder, it's only that note that gets affected by the routing of the aftertouch. So let's say I have this aftertouch going to like the pitch of a synthesizer. I can play this, and then the high note, I can make it even higher just by pressing it down further. Or if I wanted to open up the filter of just this note and none of the others, I press it a little harder, or I can press this one a little harder. It's so much fun to get just a more humanistic feel to your music using this. As far as the main differences between these two, those are them. You get velocity, you get polyphonic aftertouch, which you don't get here. You get MIDI in and out, for example, connecting again to a synthesizer or another piece of device directly on here, which you don't get here. This also has the standalone modes like drum mode. It has the fader mode, which you can fade things in and out or fade them out at the same time. You also have programmer mode and Ableton mode. This is basically just Ableton mode, but also works well with other digital audio workstations or DAWs like Logic, Pro Tools, whatever you want to use it with. If I had to choose between the two, I would have to use the Launchpad Pro. This is my favorite MIDI controller. I don't know how to play keys. This is a new instrument, a new way to play keys. Instead of learning to play the keyboard from scratch, I can learn how to play this from scratch, and it's so much fun because it assists you every step of the way, and it's just quick, intuitive, lightweight, easy to carry around, and I mean, again, 5-pin MIDI. You can't beat it. I love my synthesizers, and I love playing my synthesizers with this guy. But that's not to say that the Launchpad is not good. If I was a strict, in the box, I just want to do everything on the computer, Ableton with one controller, this would be my go-to guy. It's lighter, it's durable, nothing on here is going to snap off or break. I just have to plug it in, I'm good to go. So I hope this video helps. If it does, please leave a like down below. If you have any questions that I didn't get to answer here, leave them in the comment section below and I'll get back to them as soon as I can. As always, share the love, share the knowledge. Knowledge is power. Peace.